You're listening to Through Our Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State, a podcast that centers on disability with the hopes of uplifting, informing, and bringing together disabled people and their allies. If you'd like to join Dana in the conversation, head to the description to check out our link tree and find us on Instagram at DANA at Sac State. Hashtag Where's the Ramp? Hashtag We're Good at Podcasting.
Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State, a podcast that centers on disability by uplifting, informing, and bringing together disabled people and their allies. If you'd like to join Dana in the conversation, check out our links or find us on Instagram at DANA at Sac State. Hashtag Where's the Ramp? We're good at podcasting. Hi everyone, my name is Rian Dindzans and I'm here with William and Brian. This week, I will be a host on the topic of adaptive sports, mainly power soccer. We will talk about how adaptive sports are real sports, the rules of power soccer, and how to get involved. Of course, this topic can steer to other related topics as we discuss. And with that, huge shout out to Professor Rian Nguyen, who did my Comms 5 class back in 2019. I wrote a 12-minute speech for an assignment that was only supposed to be 4 minutes. This is for you. What do you guys think an athlete should look like? Picture it in your mind. So, what do you see, basically? Do you see a buff body with thick legs and abs and able-bodied?
Yeah, honestly, for me, I just see people with muscles and just people with muscles that have really good muscle memory.
Yeah, for me, all the muscle, they are big and strong.
Yeah, like the stereotypical ideal athlete body, right? So basically, there is no ideal athlete body. That doesn't exist because it's not only unrepresentative of abled athletes, because what looks like the ideal body varies from sport to sport, but also disabled athletes. You don't have to be able-bodied to have the ideal athlete body. So according to the 2011 report on disability from the World Health Organization, 15% of the world's population lives with a disability. That means about 1 out of every 7 people in the world has some sort of disability. This is relevant to the able-bodied people of our audience because you will likely become disabled someday, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. Someone you know and love might become disabled, or maybe their kids or siblings could be. When that happens, they'll likely want to get involved in adaptive sports, and you're going to want to be the one to make sure they know that they are a real athlete who deserves respect from the effort they're put into their sport. I can't say that I'm an expert on everything disabled because the disabled community is so diverse and my experience is relatively limited. I can say, though, that I have been disabled my whole life, and I know injustice when I see it. I've experienced it myself, witnessed it happen to my closest friends in the disabled community, and I can say with absolute certainty that our society doesn't respect us yet. For the past 9 years, I've been playing a sport called power soccer. My team and I put all our effort into our practices, scrimmages, and games. We've gone to national about 3 or 4 times, and we're going to do it again, hopefully next summer. But there's something wrong. Not many know about us and our sport. When we receive media coverage, we're treated as inspirations, not athletes. I really wanted to look into this, so I researched several different adaptive sports and disabilities, and I saw that how they're handled by the media is unacceptable. Here's the issue. Overall, adaptive sports are not regarded nor respected at the same level as abled sports, but they should be. Abled athletes are not the only real athletes. I'm here to explain why. First, I'll be showing you why there is an issue in the disparity of treatment between abled sports and adaptive sports. Then I'll explain how media treats us as an inspiration rather than the athletes we are and why it's a major component of the problem. Finally, I'm going to go over what you can do to help. Before I get started, I want to clarify a couple terms you may hear me use. One of those terms is the word cripple. As my speech is on a different topic, you can look this up yourself. It's very fascinating, but a good portion of the disabled community is trying to reclaim this word. I am one of those people, so when you hear me say cripple, it is only another term for the disabled being used by one of the disabled. That's not to say that everybody can say that term. If you are not disabled, please refrain from using the word cripple. The second term I will be using, and one you've already heard, is abled sports. As I'm trying to redefine normal sports as both abled and adaptive sports, as opposed to only sports played by able people, this term will appear frequently in my discussion about the disparities between adaptive sports and abled sports. Okay, that was a long prelude, so here we go. The reasons why adaptive sports should be treated the same as able sports is because we work harder than able athletes to live and be the best we can be in our sport, and because adaptive sports themselves are individual. They're not just the disabled version of an abled sport. Disabled athletes work harder than able professional athletes because of several reasons. For one, unless they win a medal in the Paralympics, they don't get paid for their hard work. So unlike some professional abled athletes, they have a job outside of the sport that they have to do to earn money, yet they still dedicate so much time to the sport to be the best they can be. And the reason they don't get paid is because a lot of adaptive sports organizations operate on donations and seasonal registration fees, meaning that they often don't have enough left over for prize money, and because the media does not cover adaptive sports in the same manner as they do for abled sports. For example, the United States Power Soccer Association, the USPSA, which according to the website is a 100% volunteer organization, there is no prize money for teams who win the Nationals Cup, as money is spent on operations, travel grants, equipment for the tournament, and providing food to the athletes during the tournament. As for the media, I will address that in a little bit. To summarize, little coverage is done on adaptive sports, and when it is covered, it's framed as inspirational, pick-me-up story of the day report rather than a sports report. So instead of giving the scores of the game and highlights of really good plays, they talk about how amazing it is that all these disabled people are doing something they love. You know, this discourages the implementation of professional play and prize money for adaptive sports. Second reason that disabled athletes have to work harder than able athletes is because travel is extremely difficult for many disabled individuals, since transportation, especially air travel, is tailored to the abled. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast before about the accessibility of transportation, but to summarize, for planes, which is probably one of the most prominent forms of travel, they provide a lot of hassle to those who are disabled. First, you have to make it through security, enduring invasive pat-downs if you use a wheelchair, and getting onto the plane can be very difficult and dangerous, especially if they don't know how to lift you correctly. And the damage to both sports equipment and medical equipment, including your wheelchair, is extremely high. According to the website of All Wheels Up, a nonprofit fighting for accessible air travel, airlines spend millions of dollars a year paying compensation for damages to vital equipment that can cost upwards of $12,000. For many disabled individuals, their equipment is extremely important to their independence and health, not to mention the sport they're going to be playing in. If one or all of their equipment is damaged, they're done for and they can't play. That's part of the reason why my team didn't go to nationals this year, because we only have 4 players, and 4 players is the minimum you have to have in order to play. If one of us got our chair damaged during the flight, we'd have traveled all that way and spent all that money on travel and hotel for nothing, because we wouldn't be able to play. And that's why it's such a serious issue for airlines to be so bad at handling disabled people's medical equipment. And even if you choose to avoid air travel, traveling by public transportation, car, or boat are all riddled with long travel times, cramped spaces, and inaccessible if any stops for bathroom breaks. Nationals is in Indiana. That's a long way for a Californian to go, and I don't think we'd make it if we had to travel by bus or train. And we'd probably drive ourselves up the walls if we tried to take a road trip that far.
Oh my gosh.
Especially for such a high stakes event. You know, this is nationals. You go there to win. And it's crushing when you don't do well. So my third point for disabled people having to work harder than abled athletes is that many disabilities come with medical complications, which are expensive, time-consuming, and energy draining. And keep in mind, this is on top of all the things both abled and disabled athletes have to deal with, like taxes, their job, life in general, and dedicating time for their sports. Injuries and illnesses for disabled athletes can also often be more serious than abled athletes. If you have a muscular disease like mine, your bones might be underdeveloped or brittle, and they'll take a longer time to heal if broken. For people like me, whose disability has compromised my immune system, a simple cold can take me out for weeks, limiting the time I have for my sport. I can't go back until I'm completely healthy because I can't risk infecting others. And this is during normal, non-pandemic times. Keep that in mind. When I do come back, I try to make up for all the missed practice time, which can sometimes push me over my limit. Disability-related surgeries and medical conditions as well can put athletes out of commission, in addition to common injuries and sports-related injuries. About a third of the total players in my power soccer community have had back surgery or spinal fusion because their disability exacerbated scoliosis and they had to undergo the procedure to protect themselves from the consequences of a twisted spine. Another surgery could be to cut the muscles in our joints if they've developed contractions involving another lengthy recovery. And sometimes your disability itself can interfere directly with your ability to play. For example, someone with a muscle disease or chronic pain might need to take time off because their disability is forcing their body to rest. We actually lost a player who had to retire from the sport because her disability was making it that she could no longer safely or comfortably sit in her chair and was getting pressure sores. And pressure sores are really dangerous and serious because they can develop infections and that can cause things like sepsis. And that's bad, very bad. And so, given all that, point being that we work hard to do what we do, and we're not recognized for it at all. We're just told, oh, you're so inspirational, and they completely ignore all the hard work and struggles we've had to go through to be good at our sport. They don't focus on the fact that we're good at our sport. They focus on the fact that we're disabled and inspirational. That's a slap in the face.
Yeah.
And so moving on to my next point about why we should be taken seriously is that adaptive sports have deviated greatly from their abled origins. Even if they even had any, there are some adaptive sports that are completely original. And each adaptive sport is an individual sport in their own right. They're not just the crippled version of a regular sport. For example, wheelchair rugby has evolved a lot from its roots. According to the website of the International Wheelchair Rugby Federation, IWRF.com, quote, wheelchair rugby was invented in 1977 in Winnipeg, Canada, by a group of quadriplegic athletes who were looking for an alternative to wheelchair basketball, end quote. While it is called wheelchair rugby in the words of the IWRF, it's more of a combination between rugby, basketball, and handball. It's very close contact, a very rough sport that has distinct looks and rules that deviate from the abled sport of the similar name. In 1993, once the sport had amassed 15 countries, it was recognized as an official sport for athletes with disability. The website adds that a year later, it was recognized by the International Paralympic Committee as a Paralympic sport. Another example would be goalball, a sport for the visually impaired. And that sport isn't even based off of an abled sport. It's completely original. According to the IBSAsport.org, IBSA standing for the International Blind Sports Federation, quote, goalball was invented in 1946 by Austrian Hans Lorenzen and German Sepp Rundel in an effort to help in the rehabilitation of blind war veterans, end quote. The sport was made official 3 decades later when, again, from the website, quote, the game was introduced to the world in 1976 at the Paralympics in Toronto, Canada, end quote. The sport has been played at every Paralympics since. It's incredible to watch, too, because the audience has to be completely silent for the players to hear the bell in the ball to locate it. And the blocks that they make and the throws that they make are really cool to watch, because you have to like dive to the side in order to get the ball and prevent it from going in your goal. And the communication between teammates too is fascinating to watch as well, because in power soccer, everything's loud all of the time. You have to yell to be heard, but in goalball, not as much, because it's already quiet. So it's really cool to see how they communicate with each other and like see the differences in sports. So getting back on topic, as much as we dedicate ourselves to being the best athletes we can be, we're not given the same level and quality of recognition for our hard work as disabled athletes. This issue of media coverage is the next thing I'll be addressing. I talked about it a bit before, but I'm going to go into more detail now. Oftentimes, athletes in the disabled community are treated as an inspiration rather than real athletes. I'm going to start with some personal experiences that illustrate the problem and what it's like when the problem is no longer present. Several videos have been done on my power soccer team where uplifting music has been played over footage of our games while we're interviewed with questions that focus on our disability and how the sport has impacted us rather than our performance in the actual sport itself. While it's great to spread awareness about the benefits of the sport and awareness on different types of disabilities, what do you actually find out about the sport? All you really know is that cripples play it. Aside from that, putting pretty music over an intense, strategic, and brutal sport is honestly insulting and demoralizing because it isn't accurately reflecting the spirit of the athletes in the sport. If I had my way with that video, I would have put like Eye of the Tiger over it instead of like
Yeah.
like classical music shit. Like, what about this strikes you as classical? Like, disconnecting the mood there, right? Like, if
Yeah,
you're
it's
actually
so-
paying attention to her playing, you'd choose like a rock song or something, you know? So those are my one of my personal experiences. And as an example of good media coverage, one time an actual sports announcer came to one of our games and he introduced each player in a fun manner, you know, the way you hear a boxing ring announcer call up the fighters. And when the game started, he narrated the whole thing, verbally detailing the plays and interpreting the referee calls. Even though it was a little distracting, it was the most validating experience I've ever had with the sport because this is what you're supposed to do. He was focused on the actual sport and our skills as athletes and recognizing us for that instead of being disabled. And that was a lot of fun. And that's what I want everyone to do if they're covering disabled sport. So while I know how disabled athletes are treated from multiple personal experiences, it's also backed by research. Marie Harden of Pennsylvania State University writes about the Supercrip model in a piece titled Disability in Sport, non-coverage of an athletic paradox. In short, the supercrip model is described in Hardin's report as a way of framing disabled athletes in news stories, where they focus on how they overcome challenges and their disability, rather than the athlete aspect of their life. This is what I've been talking about, and that's the name for it, supercrip. This is the model that has framed my previously mentioned video experiences and has become a breeding ground for inspiration videos rather than real sports coverage. Hardin notes that even if the athlete in question knows the news station is interviewing for inspiration rather than sports, they can't do much about it because they will face pushback from the news station. This occurred with interactions between CBS and 1996 Paralympian Hope Llewellyn. According to Hardin, Llewellyn tried to frame herself as the athlete she is. However, CBS still twisted it to fit the supercrip mold. Hardin quotes a 1999 analysis of CBS coverage by authors Shell and Duncan, where it is noted that, quote, commentators often dramatize the enormously difficult challenges and obstacles faced by people with disabilities. Basically, they exaggerated their struggles surrounding their disabilities rather than, focusing on their sport. According to Marie Hardin, the way that athletes are covered in, quote, feature stories instead of sports stories, end quote, and, quote, de-emphasizes the athlete's sporting accomplishments, end quote. This is demoralizing because it means the public doesn't actually care about your accomplishments. They're just infatuated with the concept of a disabled person doing neat things that able people also do. It's also demotivating because, as blind journalist Kathy Wolf put it in Hardin's report, quote, the supercrip exacerbates the already difficult challenges that people with disabilities face. If we hear enough such stories, we may feel defeated by comparison, end quote. Put into clearer words, it gives the able public an expectation that those with disabilities can do anything. They just aren't trying hard enough. But that isn't the case. Not everyone with a disability can do everything. That's the whole point of the word disability. By placing this pressure on a whole group of people to match the best of their peers, you're pressuring them to do something that they either literally can't do or can't do safely. This is the type of unfair media coverage we disabled athletes have to deal with. It's a real issue that reflects our society's ignorance of disability sports culture. It may sound disheartening, but it's never too late to fix this. As we've established why unequal treatment of adaptive sports is an issue and why the issue even exists, we're now going to go over ways that we can publicize disabled sports and finally merge their coverage with abled sports. First, you can always take a moment to do a bit of your own research on different types of sports the disabled community engages in. You can research online very easily. Many well-established sports organizations have an official website where you can find firsthand information. The Paralympics website is actually a great place to start because you can get a summary of each participating sport. There's also the USPSA Power Soccer, which lists teams, local events, and has a description of the sport and a timeline for its evolution. The IWRF, which is for wheelchair rugby, has all the same features as the USPSA, as well as a picture gallery, newsreels, and documents you can download to read up on the rules. Once you have an idea of what interests you, you can look up particular sports and watch those games on YouTube. No, Nationals just happened for Power Soccer, like a couple weekends ago, like just this past weekend, and they live streamed the whole thing on YouTube, so you can watch some of the best games in the nation for this year on YouTube on powersoccershop.com. It's fantastic. I highly recommend the Flyers versus the Shockwave game. It was so much fun to watch. Anyway, you can also attend a game in person if they're allowing it at the moment. But pre-pandemic, Power Soccer games were often free to attend, and you'd be surprised at how many local adaptive sports tournaments there are. Right here in Sac State, the Well hosts adaptive sports experiences occasionally, And there's a power soccer team in Davis, and they hold tournaments only about 20 minutes away from Sac State. It's also a great way to get to know the sport better, mostly because you can talk to the athletes and coaches when they're not playing and hear directly from them what the sport is like and how you can get involved. By attending, you're also contributing to their fan base, and the larger the fan base, the easier it'll be to convince sports news stations to cover them. Also, a lot of sports rely on volunteers, power soccer especially. We need volunteers to help set things up and to help make sure that rules are being followed and balls are being catched. If you have a local team near you and you're not disabled but you still want to help, I highly recommend talking to the team and asking what you can do to volunteer and what you can do to help, because I know at our power soccer practices, we could always use more people to help out with the drills. So going back to the convincing sports news stations to cover adaptive sports bit, that actually leads to my second solution, which is to encourage sports news stations to professionally cover local or national games. News stations usually have several ways you can contact them for a story, so you can apply pressure on multiple fronts. Rope some friends in and keep it up for as long as you can, and you might convince them. Another way to encourage more sports coverage is to push multiple news stations to air the Paralympics. To my current knowledge, according to their website, only Channel 4, a British channel, was set to air the 2020 Paralympics. That was the channel we watched it on, the delayed Olympics on, when it happened. And there are not many other channels at all, really, that air the Paralympics. And that's a little messed up considering how big the Olympics are. Why aren't we paying any attention to the Paralympics? America's NBC aired the 2018 Pyeongchang Paralympics, and according to Paralympic.org, they aired the 2016 Rio Paralympics alongside USOC. There was a promise that they'll air the 2020 games given their history, but these stations need to be given incentive to air the Paralympics. Much of our country, they run on popularity capitalist values, so the more support they have for it, the more likely it is we'll have more coverage of the Paralympics. America likes being the best, but again, according to Paralympic.org, from least to most, Venezuela, Spain, Russia, France, and Colombia had more than 3 broadcasters for the Paralympics, while America only had 2. We can do better. The final thing I recommend is to spread the word about what I've shared with you all today. This is really the most effective thing you can do because so little people know about adaptive sports and disabled athletes in general. And as we've established, the media doesn't help with awareness at all. Even if some people you talk to already have an idea about it, you can still clarify certain things for them or have a conversation about it. The more people who talk about it, the better. So, in summary, currently adaptive sports are not treated with the same dignity and respect as abled sports are. The ball is slowly rolling to change that, but it's not enough. Disabled athletes deserve to be recognized for their dedication to a sport that isn't just a copy of another able sport. Media outlets need to stop treating disabled athletes as inspirations and start covering them on sports channels. We can help persuade them, support local teams as well, and spread the word about this social injustice. It's never too late to realize and help others realize that abled athletes are not the only real athletes. Frank, I'm sorry this took 3 years to get out there, Professor. Anyway, let's talk about it. Let's talked for way too long.
I got questions.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much for that whole speech. It's been really interesting to hear. And I guess my first question is, my first comment is, like, disabled people are highlighted just by living their life differently, right? Like, oh, you're inspiration because you're just living your life. You're just working. You're just
I've been called an
Coding.
inspiration for going to the dentist's office.
Wow. That's tough. Yeah, I actually in 2012 in like middle school, I was the most inspirational student.
Oh my god! Oh no! Oh no!
And the next year it was another disabled person, the most inspirational person.
Why?
I don't know.
Did they say why? Like, what was their reasoning? Not that you're not inspirational,
How
because
could
your
you?
your tech skills are ones I could only dream about. Honestly,
Yeah.
but like, that's not even relative to your disability or anything. I'm just really bad with tech, so I'm inspired by anyone who's good at tech.
Yeah, thanks. But like, I didn't really get that good grades. I had like C's like on like English and history, and then over time, like towards the final like semester, I got like a B in it or a C in it. But like, I don't know why they gave me.
I mean,
inspirational student.
these are fine, but I wouldn't call them inspirational.
I mean, was it A? I don't remember. But like, it's probably not because of my grades, because I didn't have good grades in 7th grade.
It's so weird.
Yeah, in the last semester, I only have one history class about architecture, and it's just only one essay, 10 pages. I
Mhm.
wrote that, like a lot of that in the other class, and just project that is fun. I just got on the wall for like best achievement, what? But it's still good because it's not only me getting it; it's like somebody get that too. So I didn't feel like really like why do you have that only for being disabled?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, for me, like I don't know, I started having good grades in like my high school year, my 9th grade. But like I don't know why I was the most inspirational student. I don't know who nominated me. I don't know. I mean, I did have like a special ed like teacher, but I don't know if she did.
I mean, I know they mean well. I always know they always mean well when they say that you're inspirational. But it just comes off as hollow because
Mhm.
what have you actually done to be considered an inspiration?
Yeah.
Like going to the moon? That's inspirational, right? But getting a good grade, but not the best grade.
I don't think it's because of my grades. I think it's just me living my life.
Yeah,
Probably.
like
I was struggling.
you're just living your life. I mean, I've never understood that. I've never understood that.
Yeah, I mean, like,
the
have you ever
inspiration
got
stuff.
like awards for it, like Rian, like awards for being an inspirational person?
A couple times.
Really, when?
I've tried to erase them from my memory. Times. But I do know that I did work hard for my grades more than I should have.
Same.
So like being told I was getting an award for my grades, like I was fine with that. But when we started getting into the inspirational part, that's when I was like, can we not? Can we not? But I'm lucky that I had teachers that would acknowledge me for things that I actually worked hard on and did well on. Like I got an award for being good at organization, which I was proud of because I'm an absolute mess. And I figured out a system to keep my folders organized, and my teachers noticed and nominated me for that. So I was like, nice. But I have been nominated for like inspirational awards before, and it's awkward. I can't remember specific times because, like I said, I've tried to erase it from my memory. I guess that means it worked, so good for me. But yeah, and it's uncomfortable being put on the spotlight like that, especially if you weren't expecting it,
for
or if
me,
you feel
like,
like you didn't deserve
for me,
it.
there was like an awards ceremony of like that. But I was surprised that I got it. Like, it wasn't like, oh, well, out of these 5 students, who was gonna get it? It was a big surprise during the awards ceremony. And plus, like, other people were celebrating about their grades, like a 3.5, 3.0.
Yeah, it's awkward. It's awkward because you're like, not expecting
Mhm.
it at all. And I mean, I don't know if that's just humbleness or common sense or
Yeah.
self-depreciation. Because for me, it was self-depreciation. I never expected any awards at
Same.
all to
Mhm.
ever come my way, and yet they still did.
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest, I still have the placard on my wall. Do you have any placards on your wall?
I have a couple. Most of them are kind of filed away on my shelf over there behind the paper flowers. And I have my team spirit award from the soccer team.
Nice.
And that wasn't like an inspiration thing. That's just like a sportsmanship buddy award, you know, because our team is pretty close knit. So when we give each other awards for stuff like that, it's just saying like,
Yeah.
you're pretty cool this season. Thanks for being cool, you know?
It's more wholesome.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah,
one.
and it has the signature of my coach on there, so I
That's
will cherish that forever.
Yeah,
He
that's really wholesome and cute.
passed away
Sweet.
in summer of 2020, and it's been hard without
Oh,
him
no.
because our team was brought together literally by him. Like he formed our team, and he was disabled like us, so he has played the sport before as well. So he had all these different perspectives that he could like understand and relate to us through as our coach. And he was good at what he did. He led the Team USA to victory a couple times. So
nice.
he was a really good coach, and
Wow.
he's sorely missed by a large part of the power soccer community and us most of all. He was a great role model for me and was actually an inspiration because he had such a unique way of looking at things in life, and that benefited me not only in the sport but also in my own life as well. And I mean, I guess that's the power of, you know, getting involved in a sport, you know, making those connections and those memories and letting other people affect you in a positive way. You know, the sport has quite literally changed my life in more ways than one in several moments throughout my life, which is to be expected. I've been playing it 9 years.
9 years.
But yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And it's actually part of the reason why my stance on cures is no thank you, because it makes it's a good chunk of the reason why I feel my disability is worth having, you know? And I think it's amazing that a team sport can have such a positive impact on your mindset like that.
It just can change your perspective on like things. Like, yes, my life is still worth living, even though I may be different.
Yeah, and being different in this world, it's tough. You know, it makes you think that you're not supposed to be there, but you are. And difference is such a beautiful thing. So it's so nice to have that prove to you that your difference is worth having around, that you as a person are worth having around because you're a person, right? Yeah.
That
got heavy. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it just sounds like it's made such a significant impact in your life, and yeah, it sounds great. William, do you have questions you want to ask? It's your turn.
About the soccer, power soccer, and I love to play that, but when I see the video how the wheelchair like really fast and some of them they have different wheelchair, but for you, Rian, like when you play, do you like carry different wheelchair or you have your own wheelchair?
So technically you can play with your everyday chair, but it's not recommended.
Yeah, that's true.
The earliest version of the sport actually had people in their everyday chairs using like milk crates around their footrest as the first foot guard for kicking the ball. And some players do still do that with more recreational teams, but if you want to play on a more serious level, I highly recommend getting a different chair to use and getting a proper foot guard. BORP, the organization I play for, they have several chairs that anybody can use who wants to try out the sport. So that's really helpful for anyone who wants to get involved. They are pretty well established though, and not every power soccer team is going to have equipment to be able to test like that, but it's worth asking if you want to try it out.
Yeah. I had a question about that. Like, how much is it? Like for you, did you have to pay out of pocket?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. So, like I said, BORP is well established. So for our case, BORP paid for my power soccer chair. The Strike Force, that's the one I use, and that's the one that most professional athletes in the sport use. It's a very powerful chair and it can go pretty fast. It's literally built for the sport. So it's very handy to have, especially if your skill level has exceeded the capacity of the chair you're using. It's
I just looked
expensive.
up. I just looked it up. It's $9,500 for one.
It's $9,500. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I was getting to that, but it's expensive. It's an investment, and it's something that you want to get if you're serious about the sport. I am serious about the sport. If I ever wanted to leave BORP, which that'd have to be a nightmare scenario. If I ever wanted to leave BORP, I'd have to buy it off of them if I wanted to take the chair with me. And that's understandable because it's damn expensive. And they invested in me using that chair. That's why they bought it for me, because they sometimes have enough money from their donors that they are able to buy equipment for their players. But it's not always the case. I was quite frankly lucky that they had enough money to get me a Strike Force. But yeah, it's so much fun to play. It is fast paced and rough. Crashes happen all the time. I mean, they're not supposed to. You're supposed to be careful because you want to avoid crashes, right? But they do happen, and quite frequently, especially if both teams are really fired up. So, it's not exactly a sport for someone who could be injured really easily, but there are players who can be injured really easily who still play at the professional level. They've just invested in equipment to keep them safe, and they do have to be adjusted, like their body parts have to be adjusted for comfort intermittently throughout the game. But I mean, if you're dead serious about it, there's nothing really stopping you. You just have to know your limits, what you can handle. And you can always try it out, and people in the power soccer community are very welcoming to people who are interested in the sport. They will answer every single question you have, and they'll encourage you to try it out. They'll give you resources to help you try it out. I love the power soccer family. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a close knit and wholesome kind of family in a way.
Yeah, and there's no restriction on age or gender either, because the chair is basically the equalizer. And it only comes down to your skill using the chair.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just how good you are at the joystick. How fast is it go for you? Do you know?
I don't know the exact speed in miles per hour, but in order to speed test, you run the length of the court. It's like a basketball court.
Yeah.
You run the length of the court, and the referees run alongside you with timers, and they take the average of the two timers. You want to be between the 6-second and 5-second range. So it only takes a few seconds to cross the length of the court. So that's pretty fast.
Pretty fast.
And you don't want to be hit by their guards because they are low and made of metal. Did you
Wait,
have a
Gonna
question,
break the
William?
wall. No. I was gonna say it's gonna break the wall. But
Yeah.
the spinning is really fast.
Oh yeah,
Like,
Yeah, it's
the
very
spins are so
fast.
cool.
is that supposed to do that? So you can kick the ball, right?
Was that?
Is it supposed to like spin really fast so the ball could kick down? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fast. You can actually be disqualified if you're too fast or if you're too slow. So that
Oh,
range
okay.
there that
So
I
hard.
said, that's where you want to land because that's the legal range.
Legal.
So when you play, how is the what is that? The site, how do you deal with that?
Like a one-on-one, like a player against another player? Or?
No, like seeing everything while
Yeah,
driving.
seeing everything, the ball,
Oh,
driving.
basically it comes down to communication and teamwork, honestly. Because I can't see everything on court. I have pretty good peripherals and I can turn my head, but some of my teammates can't. And so
Yeah.
we make a point to communicate no matter what. Like it's on your left, behind you, or move or rotate. You know, we've got different words for different things and sometimes different words for the same thing. But yeah, it just comes down to being able to communicate with your teammates. And also like knowing your teammates, you know, being able to predict what sort of things they usually do in certain situations.
Yep, that's cool.
Yeah, and for me, I didn't know that there's like legal ranges for like the spins. I mean, I guess it makes sense because like all power shares are different. Everyone may not have the same one, so that's like keep it fair or like equity.
Yeah, because you don't want to go too fast because that's an unfair advantage. So that's why there's an upper speed limit. And you don't want to go too slow because that can actually be a bit dangerous. Because you know, you need to be able to move on court. There are exceptions, you know, if a player doesn't have good control over their chair, then they're still able to play with an extremely slow speed. But they just need to prove that they can control their chair. Because otherwise, you know, you don't want to cause crashes on court. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to make the sport work for you, and the rules itself are actually very flexible and welcoming to different disabilities and things like that, which is part of the reason why I love the sport, because you get such a wide range of people and you all have one thing in common. You love beating the shit out of each other and kicking the ball as hard as you can.
Yeah, I want to ask about like the sensitivity like of the joystick. So when you like move it slightly, it will like go, right? Like instantly, or like
it depends. You can actually change the sensitivity to fit your
my gosh.
needs.
Oh yeah,
Because the sensitivity doesn't equal speed. It's more like acceleration.
Exactly.
So if you have weaker muscles and you have to, you can only push the joystick a little, you can turn up the sensitivity so that the chair responds the way you want it to with not as much physical effort. And if you say, for example, if you have cerebral palsy and your hand jerks a lot, you can turn down the sensitivity so that you don't accidentally whack someone.
Yeah, like for me, like even right now, like I use the fastest speed as possible because I like like instant stuff. So I don't. I like my other shares like had like a slight delay, and it's weird.
Yeah, because you want to go, but you push the joystick, you want to go, right?
Yeah, my chair there's another controller in the back. So whenever my hand got cold, I need somebody to like do that. But I thought it's so fast. It's only like really slow, and then people push me say, okay, let me drive it. I need to drive fast.
Yeah, like for me, I have like four modes. I have like indoor slow, indoor moderate, outdoor fast. Like, is
Yeah,
it the
that's
same
what I
for you
have.
guys? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, with power soccer chairs, usually we have two modes.
Mhm.
One is the normal speed that you expect from a normal power chair, and the other is the very fast speed that
right.
you use for
That makes sense.
games. And I need to be careful and pay attention to which mode I'm on because sometimes I forget.
That's tough. I want to ask about transferring. Like,
Yeah.
does like people transfer like at site or like before they come? How does that work?
It depends. I mean,
Okay.
that's not something that's regulated. You
Mhm.
just need to be in your soccer chair when the game starts.
Okay.
And also for the speed test. But I mean, I've seen a whole bunch of different transferring methods. Some people transfer before they get to the game.
Mhm.
You know, they stay in their soccer chair all day. Other people bring both their chairs and transfer between the two in between games when they have downtime. For example, my dad lifts me and transfers me
Mhm.
from my soccer chair to my normal chair, and other people's aides or parents transfer them manually, or they transfer them using a Hoyer lift
Yeah,
that they
Hoyer
bring
lift.
with them. I've seen plenty of Hoyer lifts
Mhm.
at competitions. Yeah, there's a whole variety. You know, as long as it works for you, that's what you do. Because it's not something that's regulated.
Mhm. Yeah. I want to ask about like, I guess like that piece of metal in front of your legs. Like, do you put that on before
Yeah, the guard.
or like guard? Yeah. Before or after? Or like, I don't know, right before the match or like a little earlier?
Personally, we put on the guard as soon as I get in my chair because it's a little finicky sometimes. Sometimes it won't fit right. The guard can be bent. It can be bent,
Really?
which
Okay.
is why it's a little finicky to put on because I've been using it for so long. It's a little crooked. I mean, I can still use it, but I should probably look into getting a new guard at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we put it on as soon as I get in my power soccer chair after I'm settled in my chair because transferring in and out of my soccer chair while it's still on is a pain.
Yeah.
Other people, they keep the guard on at all times and they don't bother taking it on and off, and so they transfer that way. Sometimes some people wait last minute to put their guard on. It really depends.
Yeah, it
It's
just
like the
really depends.
transferring. So real quick, the rules of the game because I never went over.
Oh yeah. That's important. That's really important.
Yeah. Do that.
This is a goal.
So basically, you have 4 players per team on court and 2 teams per court, and you are fighting for both possession of the ball and to score on the other team's goal. The goals are set up so it's basically a set length across the further edge of the basketball court that you're playing on, and you have 2 poles that have height indicators for how high the ball is allowed to go in the air. The ball cannot go past those indicators, otherwise it's a fly ball. Play is stopped, and 2 players have to face each other one-on-one, and they can only go when the whistle blows, and you can only touch it with the front of your guard when you start. But after that,
okay.
it's free game. The play is stopped every time there is a violation, and if there is a violation, the ball is turned over to the other team, and they get to kick off. For general strategy, most teams use what's known as the triangle or V formation, where you have the center down back further and 2 wings up ahead, and the center's job is to pass to the wings, and the wing's job is to push the ball up or pass back to center if they're cornered. And the 4th player is the goalie, and they stay behind. There is also a box around the goal where it extends into the court. It's usually blue, but sometimes it's other colors. but it's known as the box, and only 2 players per team can be in their respective box. If more than 2 players are in the box at any point, even if it's just the corner of your guard, which has happened to me, it's annoying as shit, but even if the corner of your guard enters the box while 2 of your teammates are in the box, and it doesn't necessarily have to be goalie and other player, it can be any 2 players. But if even a little bit of another player enters the box, the play is stopped, the ball is placed at the top of the box, and the other team gets to kick it towards your goal. Not fun. So those are the basic rules. Other things include you can't get within 3 meters of your teammate and another teammate if the ball is in that area. The other teammate being the other team's teammate.
Yeah.
Because that's what's known as a 2-on-1, because there's 2 of your team and 1 of the other team, and that's not fair. And usually the way we get around that is enter 1-on-1s where it's you from your team and a person from the other team battling for the ball. But that's not recommended because you can tear up the gym floor and people don't like that. And also you can get pushed around and it's a waste of battery energy. So usually what you want to do is try to peel the ball away from your opponent and kick it back towards your teammate.
Yeah, what's your position? Do you like switch every now and then?
So some teams have set positions, others are more fluid. Our team is more fluid. I'm generally on the wing, but I can step up to be center in a pinch or even goalie. And the same goes for all of my other teammates because that's how our coach trained us. And cool. Our new coach is actually a former team member of ours, so we're all still very tight-knit and he knows what's up. He knows how to coach and he's really good at it too. So, but he has been working on honing our skills in our usual positions more, but I have confidence in our ability to switch when the need arises during a game. Like if the center goes into my wing, instead of me staying in my wing, I will rotate and become the center. Or I'll go across the court to the other wing and that wing will become center. Communication. Teamwork. It's a lot of fun.
Your team. Yeah, do you yell a lot, right?
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, I think we have to end it soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up then.
Yeah, wrap it up, Rian.
Thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to us ramble about adaptive sports and soccer. I hope you like the sound of my voice. Otherwise, I apologize. Thanks. This is Dana's Through Our Lens podcast. Thanks for listening. # Where's the Ramp?
# we're good at podcasting.
Any last words?
# Where's the ramp? Or # Where's the... I don't know.
Where the power soccer chair.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah,
right.
okay. #
Thanks
Where's the
for
ramp?
tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Through Our Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State, a podcast that centers on disability with the hopes of uplifting, informing, and bringing together disabled people and their allies. If you'd like to join Dana in the conversation, head to the description to check out our link tree and find us on Instagram at DANA at Sac State. # Where's the Ramp? # We're good at podcasting.